Each year, during Memorial Day weekend, the AOMDA, the American Overseas Memorial Day Association, holds a small ceremony at each of the 8 isolated graves of American soldiers and airmen who are buried outside of the 3 American cemeteries in Belgium. At each ceremony, the biography of the fallen hero and how he came to become buried in an isolated grave in Belgium is explained. The graves are decorated with American and Belgian flags and flowers. Taps is played, as well as the American and Belgian national anthems. A moment of reflection is then observed in honor of the deceased. An AOMDA group consisting of US Air Force personnel, representatives of the US Embassy, and representatives of the AOMDA Foundation traveled to each of the 8 graves to hold these ceremonies. On Friday, 25 May, we held ceremonies at the graves of Private Harry King, Sergeant Stan Beatty, and Lieutenant James Pigg at the Leisendhoek Commonwealth War Grave Cemetery near Poperinge. And joining the AOMDA group for this ceremony was a representative of the city of Poperinge, the superintendent of the Flanders Field American Cemetery, some local citizens, and a couple who was visiting from Australia. Before we began the ceremony, Annemie Maurice, who is responsible for the soon-to-be-opened visitor center at the cemetery, explained the history of the cemetery and the burials that took place there. Each soldier was individually honored through the playing of taps and the national anthems. That afternoon, a very large ceremony was held at the grave of Lieutenant Gilbert Mulray in Ronse. We were honored that Pieter de Krem, the Belgian Minister of Defense, attended this ceremony, as well as Robert Fauché, the Deputy Chief of Mission of the United States Embassy. The mayors of the cities of Ronse and Waregem were also present, as were other members of both city councils. The Ronse Police and Fire Brigade and several local veterans organizations sent delegations to the ceremony, and the Rebec Historical Association's World War II Color Guard presented the flags of Belgium and the United States. All in all, between 75 and 100 people attended the ceremony. However, our real guest of honor that day was Robert Mulray, cousin and childhood friend of Gilbert, from whom we have learned so much.
Ami, entends-tu le vol noir des corbeaux sur nos plaines? Ami, entends-tu ces cris sourds du pays qu'on enchaîne? Ohé, partisans, ouvriers et paysans, c'est l'alarme. Ce soir, l'ennemi connaîtra le prix du sang et des larmes. Montez de la mine, descendez des collines, camarades. Sortez de la paille les fusils.
The day of Monday, 28 May, began with a ceremony at the grave of Staff Sergeant Gerald Sørensen, who is buried at the old community cemetery of Ganshoorn. Gerald Sørensen died while fighting alongside his Belgian brother Roger Abels in the Belgian resistance, and Roger's sister Jenny was the guest of honor at our ceremonies at his grave in previous years. Sadly, Jenny passed away last November, and the commemoration was just not the same without her. Most of the attendees at this year's ceremony knew Jenny either personally or from previous ceremonies. We therefore held a moment of reflection in her honor. The Chanson des Partisans, the anthem of the resistance in World War II, and one of Jenny's favorite songs, was played in honor of Jerry and Roger's participation in the resistance. We are confident in saying that Jenny knew that their memory would live on.
Demain du sang noir séchera au grand soleil sur les routes. Chantez, compagnons, dans la nuit, la liberté nous écoute.
After Ganshoorn, the AOMDA group headed to the grave of Lieutenant Donald West in the Heverlee Commonwealth War Grave Cemetery. There, we were met by Deputy Chief of Mission Fauché, the Mayor of Leuven, Louis Tobac, Air Attaché Mike McLaughlin, and several Belgians and Americans who live in the vicinity of Leuven. As you will see by reading his biography, Don West was a pilot and a true hero, and the story of his sacrifice struck a special chord among the military personnel in attendance. The ceremony so moved Mr. Tobac that he offered the official support of the city when we hold the ceremony again next year. In the afternoon, the AOMDA group traveled to Comblain-la-Tour, where the grave of Private First Class Joe Farina lies in a churchyard cemetery. He is buried in the family tomb of Joe and Madeleine Paciotti, in whose homes he was quartered in the weeks leading up to the Battle of the Bulge. The Paciotti's grandson, Daniel Defay, joined us for this ceremony, as he does every year. And so did a member of the local city council, who attended for the first time and who offered to generate greater support from the local community for next year's ceremony. Finally, the day ended in Queue du Bois, at the grave of Lieutenant Bobby Garrett. Fernand Romain and Dominique Zuccaro, members of the local city council, organized a group of local families to join us for this ceremony. They arrived with American flags flying. In fact, 2 of the people in attendance were children of American soldiers who had been stationed in Queue du Bois during the war. Perhaps the most touching moment of the day was when the flowers were laid at Bobby Garrett's grave during our ceremony. Before the ceremony, Alicia Lemoine, a 6-year-old Belgian girl who lives in the village, learned the story of the American pilot buried in her hometown. She was so impressed by the story that she volunteered to lay flowers at the ceremony. And she did so together with José Walter, a woman who lived in Queue du Bois at the time of the Nazi occupation.